Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My questions to the government relating to the budget are focused around building houses for Australians and the long-term infrastructure commitments that compete against our sector's ability to build more homes. Deputy Speaker, housing is the biggest short-term and long-term cost of living issue in this country. It is tragic that in our country, people on moderate incomes doing important jobs cannot be certain that they can actually build a future and build a family with secure housing. We need to fix this. It's an issue that everyone cares about. Young people in my electorate, such as my Youth Action Committee, but also people on leading businesses who say, I ask them, what are people talking about in the boardroom? And they say housing. It is a cancer in our society, the unaffordability of housing, particularly in Sydney. I acknowledge that the government has taken action on housing and a number of its budgets, but my question to the government is why can't it do more in particular areas? Look, I'd like to start really acknowledging that while the government has provided some state incentives to build more housing, the evidence is suggesting that housing approvals are going absolutely the wrong direction. And my concern is that the incentives, which I thoroughly support the government bringing in, are not actually meaningful if the states don't believe that they're going to meet them, and it does not look like the majority of states will meet them at this stage. So my first question to the government is really, why shouldn't the government consider strengthening the incentives to the states to deliver on their housing commitments, both in terms of rental rights, because in my state of New South Wales we still have no-fault evictions, which we know undermines rental rights, but secondly, it's about how to strengthen the incentives so that the states actually approve more homes. It is critical, and I don't believe the government is doing enough in this space. The second question I have to the government is why won't they consider other areas of taxation in its desire to build more homes? I know that, for instance, reforming stamp duty, which is a state tax but would need federal support to actually make meaningful changes, has been estimated in New South Wales to allow another 300,000 people to be homeowners if we move from a stamp duty regime into a land tax regime. I'm sure that the government has seen the modelling in relation to this. This is a change that would fundamentally make a difference. Why isn't the government making the case for tax reform on those issues and other issues to make owning a home more achievable for more Australians? My next question really comes to the supply constraints in the housing sector at the moment. When I speak to builders, and one spoke to me the other day as I was at Rose Bay Ferry, and he just said, he's a major builder, and he just said we can't get the people. We are having to pay, really compete at the housing level with the infrastructure level. I note that in this budget, there's $97 billion towards infrastructure investment over the next 10 years. And while I support the intent of infrastructure investment, the challenge is we are absolutely supply-side constrained at the moment in our ability to deliver housing and infrastructure. And in that choice, I believe that we need to step into housing first. And so my questions really to the government in relation to this is, will the government, or why didn't the government consider pulling back on some of its infrastructure investment, in the short term at least, to allow to get through the supply-side constraints that we are facing right now in our ability to build new homes? And finally, I just want to make an observation on infrastructure more broadly, because often people say, if you want to spend more money, where would you save it? And I think the example for me would be in infrastructure spending. But that part of that is because we do not have good cost-benefit analysis in relation to the impact of our infrastructure on the economy. Now, every dollar counts, and I know that the Assistant Minister understands this probably more than anyone else in the country. Every dollar counts, and if we are not spending the big money in infrastructure well, then we are wasting money. A recent review into the National Partnerships Agreement on Land Transport Infrastructure identified deep concerns with the level of due diligence, lack of data collection and outcomes analysis, and lack of clearly defined expectations for making investment decisions. And quotes, "This undermines a Commonwealth's capacity to be an informed investor in land transport infrastructure." I find that extremely concerning, that we are spending money that is both driving up the cost of building housing and building infrastructure, but we are doing this on projects that don't have a solid cost-benefit analysis underpinning them. And so my final question to the government is a question I've raised before. Why won't the government commit to rigorous cost-benefit analysis of all infrastructure projects that can be compared, and then prioritise its investment based on those that have the strongest evidence behind them in making a difference to Australian economy? Thank you.